Hi, welcome to another interesting video on LawWiser. Today, we will be focusing on the conundrum of compliance. We all think that compliance is very simple, but it isn't. It's not just about your statutory compliances that need to be in place. It includes a lot more than just labor reform compliances, different statutory compliances. It also includes anti-corruption compliance, about which a lot of companies are very particular, trying not to come under radar of any of the regulatory authorities. So, to understand this and how it actually impacts the transparency of any organization, how there are needs for periodic reviews of various policies and transactions of the companies. To understand this and much more, we have experts with us. We have Ms. Saloni Tateja. She's Director Legal South Asia at Zimmer Biomet. She's based in India and has an extensive experience in compliance. We have another speaker with us. He is Mr. Parvez Menon. He is senior partner at MZM Legal. He also has an extensive experience when it comes to criminal litigation, white collar, and regulatory defense practice. Thank you, Saloni and Parvez, for taking time out for us.
Thank you. It's our pleasure, Sanya.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anya.
So just to begin our conversation, trying to understand compliance, I'll first ask Saloni if you could explain to our audience, the ambit of compliance and risk management, what it involves, statutory internal compliance, transparency audits for anti-corruption. So if you could just give, certain highlights for our audience on that.
So, we'll start with the explanation of compliances. I think very broadly, I can put it under three categories. One is statutory compliances, which is of course about labor laws, and I think you already gave an example of licenses. And if you're in medical device industry, that would be Drugs and Cosmetics Act or financial compliances. So that's one, statutory compliances. Second is which I know is very, very important, has always been, is anti-corruption, which has also a lot of them, including statutory. They also have a lot of cross-border application implication. FCPA UK Bribery Act is an example, but that's something we talk about as anti-corruption or also white collar crime area practice. The third is, which is really not a statute, it's not anti-corruption, it's actually internal policies about what are the processes, procedures which actually help ultimately in the risk management, or another way of saying is crisis management, risk analysis and crisis management, to put it more skunkly. And they somewhere also helps you in statutory or anti-corruption compliances, as in, for example, tender is a very, very high risk area for all the companies, because you obviously are interacting with government officials. So that's where anti-corruption comes into place. You have terms like fall clause. So obviously internally you have to check that, whether you're complying with the fall clause. And of course, the technical specification, competition law comes into place. Is there any kind of rigging happening, so on and so forth. So just to safeguard the companies from these risks, most of the companies have a policy or procedure which helps you analyze or put a step-to-step process in place, that this is the way we will bid for tender. So these are the three categories by which we typically categorize compliances. So if you're a future candidate for a company, do ask what is their expectation. If you are a law firm and a client come to you, do ask about their expectation, because like I said, a lot of us have different interpretation to compliances. If statutory compliances are not in place, or you're violating any statutory provision, of course, you'll end up paying bribery, or you'll end up, doing something which somewhere will fall under anti-corruption, or you'll try to have something which is not correct as per your books and records, or you'll not correctly put transactions in your book and record. So that somewhere also they are interconnected and they're not mutually exclusive. So that's why I think it's always good to put all the three categories into one umbrella called compliances.
That actually kind of does help us understand what all comes under it. And, moving further from there, as you highlighted around the anti-corruption, Parvez, if you can tell us how anti-corruption compliance is distinct from the other set of compliances that are there.
So, as rightly put by Saloni and categorized into three buckets of statutory compliance with in-house compliance and performance-wise, however it is. So, the major issue that bothers big conglomerates, like the one where Saloni is currently working, or be it a subsidiary of a US company or a subsidiary of a UK company working there back home in India, the major exposure and the major pain point that the companies realize these days is the laws of anti-corruption domestically in India, plus the laws of anti-corruption, which ramifications which see of actions of subsidiary in India, where the parent company has to, they are exposed to major fines or even punishments back home in either US or in the UK. So the laws that are concerning anti-corruption in India, UK, and US that we majorly deal with as a white collar crime law firm are, in India, we have the Anti-Corruption Act, which is the principal, prosecuting statute in the books in India if the company is working in India and is, functioning in India. But the ramifications that the other companies, the parent companies face back home, either in the UK or in the US, is either under FCPA, which is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and the UK Bribery Act, as rightly introduced by Saloni in the beginning of this session. So all of these acts exposes the liability of the company to fasten the bolt against their subsidiaries compliance, or whether they are compliant enough to account to make them accountable to their performances in the jurisdiction where they have the subsidiaries. So it's very necessary that the compliance program of the company has to be very comprehensive, and you should have in 2-3 months or 6 months, or say every quarter of the year, you should have a compliance program in the company to plug in the loopholes where you find that this is a red flag, or this is a situation which can put the company into a problem in future. So the major issues that are to be covered by the compliance officers, the in-house officers of the company, are to have a very fair and tight look at the accounting system, because accounts is where all the problem starts. If your accounting is completely within the statutory inverted commas of compliance, then you have nothing to worry. But if the accounting is loose and there's somewhere, because all major, we have seen that the licensing officers or the external agents are paid through the accounting channel to channelize the money, which can be red flagged as bribe money. So under the FCPA and the UK Bribery Act, the way they pierce the corporate will, the corporate wills are pierced to the extent of fastening the liability on the parent company, to the extent that even if you are not involved, or even if you are not even aware that that bribe money is being exchanged, it happens majorly. It happens in jurisdictions like India. If you see that we have licensing officers, we have agents working for us to either procure a license or to procure a tender or to liaise with the government officers. So the companies end up paying the agency their fees, which is consultancy or licensing fee or whatever. And the agency might in turn choose to bribe an officer to get a favorable order or a favorable license or whatever the company wants. So you see in this example, the company per se is not involved in bribing the government officer, but the agent of the company has done it. Still, under the UK Bribery Act or the FCPA, the company can be held liable. And the exposure in such cases is massive, like humongous. In the past, we have seen major companies being fined to the extent of more than 100 million pounds or $100 million or something. That kind of exposures are there. And in India, they are worried more because there is no deferred prosecution there. The DPA is available only in the UK or in the US. So you yourself go and report that we find that this is a red flag in the company, the compliance issue has been brought to our notice, or there is a whistleblower complaint in the company, which you yourself tend to report to the authorities to minimize the damage. But in India, since there is no DPA, the only implication that we can see is the managing directors or the high ranking officers of the company landing up in jail. The implications are massive. Hence, compliance is a major issue that has to be looked into by all the major companies. And if you don't have an in-house compliance officer like Saloni or somebody else in the company, so what happens is that you have to go to a firm or a law firm who offers this kind of services. Like MZM Legal, we offer compliance programs for companies. We have multinational companies who have subsidiaries in India. We advise them on compliance. They consult us when there is a whistleblower complaint. So there is a format. There is a big format of working when there is a compliance issue in the company to plug it nip it in the bud. Like you don't want to face all of that ramifications which are wide.
Anya, I'll just add what I think Parvez has beautifully explained is I think he mentioned something very interesting. It's also not about what you knew, but what you ought to have known. I think that's something I think Parvez has put very, very well. It's not about that, it's not enough that you put ABC. It's how effectively you have implemented those process. I think that's something is very important in a compliance program. Second, I think again, Pravesh pointed it out very well, is about the fines, heavy fines and big pocket theory. That's why they get hold of the holding companies. It is also about the reputational damage, which is unquantified. That's sometimes even bigger than the fines that we end up paying.
You should also be aware that it's not only the Anti-Corruption Act or the FCPA or UK bribery that a company may be exposed to. There are very many statutes and very many laws which are complicated back home in India. Like you have the IBC code, you have the SEBI laws, you have insider trading options, you have so many things. Like anywhere, licensing is a complicated process in India. The way we function as company in India, as you know, we don't have to shy away. We all are Indians and we are proud to be Indians. But the fact remains that India is a jurisdiction which is far behind on compliance or corruption ratings. Like there are ratings, world agencies are there who rate India very low on corruption and all. It's rampant. It's in public knowledge. We cannot shy away or we cannot run away from that. So for major multinationals, they find very difficult to work or perform in jurisdiction like India. Firstly, the compliance issues or the licensing issues or being into compliance itself is very difficult there. Like I can empathize with Saloni on her job, that it's really difficult. Like every paper to be monitored and to comply with every requirement led by the government or the agency, be it the SEBI, or if you're a public listed company, then there are so many watchdogs, so many compliances, external auditors, internal auditors, banking regulations, RBI, money transfer, money laundering. Oh my god, it's a web completely to clear. And to do business in such sort of jurisdiction and keep yourself afloat above compliance is a difficult job. And I should salute or do a hats off to people like Saloni who do in-house cleaning, to place your house in order. It's really a difficult job.
True, that's very well said, Parvez. I guess this is where we pick up for our third question as well. I we have kind of, you both have highlighted, but Parvez, if you can again quickly, just highlight those key challenges that are faced in review of these compliances and risk management of any organization. If you can just sum it up for us here.
As I say, that to begin with, the basic of compliance is to keep your books of accounts very clear and above board. So the account department or the CEO or CFO of the company are held generally responsible for such kind of red flag situations where there is. We have seen in our careers, like for last 20 years we are practicing white collar crime, and I have seen whenever major multinational has approached us, it is often too late when they come to us. because the offense has already been committed or the red flag has already been blown out of proportion by the whistleblower complaint. There are disgruntled ex-employees of the company, or there are in-house politics if it's running out in the company, one-upmanship or other, or put somebody down. If there are complaints that there could be a malified complaint, but somebody from the house reports to the external agencies, be it SEBI or be it RBI or be it any regulating body, and that's where the problem starts. And when they come to us, we see that where they have goofed up. It's always better to have an in-house compliance officer, to have a compliance program in place, so that at least you can demonstrate your bona fide to the agencies who are investigating, that our compliance program is in place. We have been doing these programs at regular intervals. We have been educating our people about what to do, what not to do, or in what particular jurisdiction XYZ is permissible or ABC is not permissible. So just to absolve the company from the exponent liabilities that you are looking at, the compliance officers are the need of the hour. The compliance program is the need of the hour. Plus, whenever there is a whistleblower complaint in-house also, it is necessary to address it and nip it in the bud, for the reason that you address it with the sensitivity that it desires. You have to keep the whistleblower in what you call picking up with hand gloves treatment, or whatever you call it, and then take his complaint seriously, investigate. We have conducted internal investigations. So there has to be internal investigation. You have to examine witnesses in-house. You have to do audits of the account where there is a red flag. You have to see what the allegation is, and if it goes beyond the purview of the company and external agencies, you have to involve everybody to place your house in order. And then still, if you find that there is substance in the allegation, or there is merit in the red flag situation, that there has been a wrong which needs to be corrected, the first requirement under the UK bribery or the FCPA is to report. So it is the responsibility of the company to report to the agencies whilst your investigation is on. But that's a very, I must say, very calculated move a company has to make, because it should not happen that you're shot in your foot. Because when you expose yourself, you expose not only the problem which you have identified, but when the agencies come into, they might go haywire and look into other areas which you may not even have dreamt in your wildest of dreams, to expose all the books or all the servers of the company, and you are in a major problem. So it's always better to have an in-house compliance officer who lies with firms like MZM Legal or any other firm that you may find, who are experts in white collar crimes, or who can advise you on FCPA or DOJ, or reporting to the DOJ or UK Bribery Act, or inside in the country who can handle the anti-corruption matters. So that's what you need to look into. You don't need to look into the accounting process. We have had instances where companies were victims of a fraud. They themselves were victims of the fraud, but the frauds were of such magnitude or such nature that even for us to digest that something like this can happen. So when you go with such an instance to the reporting agency, they don't buy your story. Because the theory is not selling. There are phishing instances. Right now we are also dealing with cybercrime instances and hacking and all other things that happen in multinational companies. So if your accounts are hacked, or phishing instances happen, and somebody has written to you anonymously as the CEO or CFO of the company that I am advising you to do this and this transaction. The accountant does this transaction in good faith, but later on it is detected by the company that it's $1 million transaction. The documents are in place, 1 or 2 days they play around, they exchange documents and then make you do the transaction. And then the company finds that it was a devious transaction. Now we need to report. So when we go to lodge even the cybercrime offense in India, back home in the BKC police station or anywhere else, they are first not convinced to register the FIR, because they look at it as something which is a red flag. It could be an offense of money laundering. It could be an offense where the company itself is involved. It could be the company is doing to cover the bribe money into and to play a victim card. So, from the word go, the agencies look at you with suspicion. And to address that situation, you need your compliance officer working in tandem with the white collar crime or expert law firms who can present your case and save you from the potential liabilities.
Saloni, from your experiences, if you can share how companies are actually coping with these changes when it comes to ABSC.
Sanya, sorry, but I think I'll little expand your question. So it's like I mentioned, compliances is a full gambit. Anti-corruption is a part of it. And I think Pravez have explained very, very well of how anti-corruption is done. Anti-corruption practices are done, how the program should be implemented. And I think he also pointed about it's not about only about implementation, it is also about effectiveness. I think that's as important. I think recently there was a FCPA investigation where there was a clear finding that yes, you had a compliance program in place. Yes, you did a internal checks and balances like an audit, but auditors had a certain finding, and these are internal auditors. Auditors had a certain finding, for example, ABCD. What was the follow up? So it's also not only about identifying the mistakes or the gaps, implementing it, checking it, but also the follow ups and improving your compliance program each day. I always call anti-corruption compliance program or any compliance program in a living organism. You have to keep nurturing it, changing it so that it can be an effective elephant. Another thing I would just point out is about statutory compliances, and especially I think Pravez did mention that India is a very complicated regime. It is not only about central laws, but state laws, tehsil laws, these laws, that laws, and it is and overlapping, and sometimes a lot of times there are grays, sometimes there are contradictions also between two laws. So I think that's something is extremely tough to balance out, and that also becomes a part of your question is how do we as in-house balance everything, anti-corruption as well as statutory compliances. While Pravez has already explained about anti-corruption, I'll just take a little time about how we balance statutory compliances, especially given the complicated regime that we are in. So it's always important. The toughest out of all is identifying what laws are applicable. I said there's central laws, state laws, tehsil laws, circle laws. I don't know how many laws that they are there. And many of them are really complicated, very technical. So we have to engage as in-house lawyers, as a company, external experts who can explain. Like I think there has been a lot of changes last year in labor laws, which gave me a lot of sleepless nights. And it's very important to first identify what is applicable. Function wise, like HR, regulatory can identify what laws are applicable to them. Similarly, finance. Then categorizing them out of million laws that are applicable to you. It is very important to say what are high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Low risk can be like ₹100 fine. Yes, we do have fines that can be as low as ₹100, and then there are high risk would be something like that has a criminal liability on the directors, which a lot of labor laws have. So that's something that is very important. Then and I can say it that it is very difficult to be 100% compliant while we always strive it. There will be a day or two when you have not complied unintentionally with a certain law. Like I remember when I used to be in law firm and I was auditing a factory. There are laws which says you can have, especially if it's hazardous, you're storing some hazardous material. It has to be 45 degree or more, the degree of which you can open your door, and this is just a random example. So of course there will be sometimes that you've not complied with that. So understanding where you violated and why you have violated and what you've done about it, I think that's very, very important. While we enthusiastically start with the program, we identify, but what are the follow-ups? That's something I cannot stress enough about. And that's where I think becomes very important. And I believe this is one of your a part of your question is how do we manage, how do in-house counsel or companies manage risks? It is about first getting the elephant in the room and then letting the elephant grow. in a way that saves you rather than being a burden on you. So that's something that is very important. Educating your team members, which I think again Pravesh had highlighted, educating them, especially in India, I think there is a lot of cultural barriers also. We don't consider 100 rupees as a bribe. We don't consider something we have done as a bribe. We have a lot of chalta hai attitude. So that's something is which is which is not acceptable. All A lot of companies, a lot of law firms also, and I am not even talking about American companies or UK companies, even Indian companies, like again public listed companies, there is zero tolerance to such activities. Then again, something that we have discussed in the earlier part of the session is not to have a knee jerk reaction, especially if you have heard a complaint or there is a whistleblower. That's something which is very important. I think again Pravesh has talked about it, is what to disclose, what not to disclose. Transparency is also intelligent, but intelligent transparency is as important. So knee jerk reaction is something that should be avoided. A compliance program is a robust compliance program, whether it's statute or anti-corruption or even internal compliances, if it is proactive and not reactive. I think none of us can afford to have a reactive, program or reactive method anymore, because the repercussions are way too strong. So I think going back to originally, how do we balance a statutory or anti-corruption or internal compliance program is, it's a very broad way of saying it. I think it's all about culture. If your integrity compass is in place, if your morality levels are high, I think that's something that is the basic. As broad it is, as may sound, as like I said, moralistic it may sound, but that's the answer. You cannot have any other way. While I can have as many programs, while I can have as many trainings, while I can have as many process and procedures, if my people do not respect it, if they don't understand it, it is never going to be effective. Then the way I teach or train my team members is, if you don't know anything, use common sense. I think there is no substitute to common sense. If you don't understand something, think whether you'll be hesitant to report this back to your manager or to compliance officer. If you have even an iota of hesitance, then there's something which is not correct. So these are basic principles that you need to work with. Rest, I think, is just a way to ease off or put a method to the entire madness. But that's the way I think we work, at least in Zimmer Biomed, and I have participated in a lot of sessions like these. Law Wiser being one of the best out there, but I think that's where the culture is the biggest or the common theme that I've seen, irrespective of the industry, irrespective of how small or big the company is, irrespective of the jurisdiction, European, UK, American, or APAC. The culture in Pakistan, in India, maybe aligned in a lot of ways, maybe very different. Sri Lanka, you'll be surprised, it has a very, very mature business practices. So, understanding and shifting your gears accordingly is as important. You cannot have one envelope covering or one approach for all the jurisdictions as well.
Add here as an instance, like she has very well covered, like there's a vast cultural difference and cultural aspect to the aspect of corruption in India or elsewhere. So as lawyers, as Saloni has also practiced in the corridors of courts, I'll give you an example that there's a culture. You can't call it bribe, but you can't even run away from it. Bakshish is a culture in India that, out of goodwill or as a gesture of your win, it's not corruption. Like the lawyer is not taking that money from his client to pay these people, but because he has to build his goodwill or face value or share his happiness. Like we tend to share our happiness that, oh, I got a favorable order. So if I pay some poor man 100 rupees or 200 rupees, that's a culture. But if you look at it from a foreign angle or from the eye of a corruption agency, it is a bribe. So culture is a very, very difficult thing, as she is working with people who are employees, and as she says that at least he used common sense, but common sense is so uncommon that it lands up major companies into major soups by such stupid kind of instances where, there would not be even mens rea or an intent for a crime, but it would still expose you to a huge liability.
So our last question is about, summing up the entire thing that you all have discussed here, which is about how lack of expertise and management awareness impacts the, compliance process. Since a lot of it has already been covered in different questions, Parvez, if you can very quickly just, sum up or share those key bullet points for us.
As you have seen earlier, we have summarized that you have to keep your house in order and comply with the agencies and the laws in the respective jurisdiction completely. Prevention is always better than cure, and you should have your house in order either through in-house compliance officers or through external law firms who would be there to guide you and nip it in the bud for you to save you from the potential liabilities that you may incur in future. So your compliance program has to be robust, and it depends on the company as to how much risk appetite they have, because it should not happen that if you follow compliance 100%, it should make it difficult to breathe, or you cannot even perform or do what you are otherwise supposed to do. Your energies should not be channelized only in compliance. So risk appetite, as Saloni rightly said, has to be taken factored into, and you should perform above board. Of course, your intention and integrity has to be reflected through your conduct. And if you are compliant enough and you have good team, I think you are taken care of.
While we have already talked in length about culture, about being proactive rather than reactive, reaching out to experts in a timely manner. I think again, maybe I'm repeating it. I think it's also keep growing with the program, keep improving the program, because what was applicable 5 years back is not applicable or as effective today. Laws keep changing. FCPA interpretations keep changing. I'll give you an example. In Berkeley, I did an anti-corruption course about FCPA and UK Bribery Act. Theoretically, how it has grown. I mean, from being academic to now where we stand, due to precedents, due to interpretation, is way different. So the years that we have traveled and the way we have interpreted has changed. So it is important that we grow with it. And also it should be along the same vein is about horizontal and vertical approach. While we focus a lot about trickle down effect, your management having the right sentiment, I think it's also important that the management learns from the people at the grassroots level, people at the field, because management don't interact with government officials as regularly as people at the fields do. It is actually, I think Parvez again touched upon it, is sometimes they are the ones that causes the biggest risk by not using their common sense. So it is important that we learn from them as well as we teach them. It's also about what I call this is what is a vertical approach. A horizontal approach is as important because I learn every day from my peers. I think peer-to-peer effect is always very impactful. Like my work would be half done if my finance controller does not cooperate with me. And I think again we have talked too much about transparency in books and reports. So having these support functions working in tandem is very important again for a good program or an effective program or being 100% compliant.
Thank you, Saloni, and thank you, Parvez. Thank you for taking time out for us. This one has been not just an interesting, but also a very helpful session for all our audience trying to understand different aspects of compliance, how crucial it is for any organization, and especially getting the perspectives of both sides, whether it's in the in-house, how in-house actually prepares, and the need for preparation for any kind of compliance and audits. At the same time, from the external viewpoint, how legal practitioners assist the companies in all of these issues that arise because of non-compliances. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out for us.